delighted to be here with you today. I'd like to thank Mr. Haryan, Mr. George Alex, and the amazing team for organizing this. And of course, I'd like to thank the excellent speakers who have preceded me, not just for their talks, but for the work that they have been doing, not just in the past 3 months, but over the past many years. Dr. Shruti Tandon talked about common sense, which Dr. Jamshed Sonawala has been talking about for a while. I have firsthand witnessed it when my dad, who's a 94-year-old gynecologist, came to the ICU with septicemia. And, in the elderly, that's not a good prognosis. And within minutes, using common sense more than anything else, treatment was initiated. And today he's alive thanks to this team. So I can never, never thank you enough. Your work has come to the attention of the hospital and possibly beyond the hospital in the last few months. But some of us know how silently, courageously, and wisely, I might add, you've been working over the past so many years. I got interested in COVID-19, though it was not called that, in January, on the 26th of January, when a good friend of mine, Ram Ranga, former mental health commissioner for the state of Delaware, and I were floating gingerly down the Ganga Delta looking for the elusive Sundarbans tiger that involved a lot of waiting. And during the waiting, we were getting intermittent internet connection and following with interest on the Lancet site what was happening in Wuhan regarding the virus. And the thought struck me, it was Republic Day, that it's possible that it may already be in Delhi, and there were over a lakh of people attending the Republic Day parade, and amongst them the consular staff from China. And I wondered what might happen. And of course, the next thought was our hospital. We know from what happened during SARS that healthcare workers and patients in hospital are the most vulnerable to a coronavirus. And so I was already thinking of a protocol for our hospital at that point in time. Got back to Bombay the 28th of January, and my publisher, Millie Ashwarya, who's brilliant and astute and is the publishing director of Penguin Random House, called me and we wrote the book, which has now been out for some time. It's available or will be available in 12 languages. Right now it's available in English. It's being considered across the world in several languages and in many countries. And, about 26 of the predictions that we made in the book, though we didn't think of them as predictions then, have been borne out in time, including some of what was spoken by the speakers that preceded me. And it's an interactive book. It's possibly the first interactive book in the world, we are told, where, people who get the book will see weekly updates on each chapter. And if they opt for it, get breakthrough notifications. For example, if a vaccine is found to be effective, the moment we know it, it'll go out to the readers of the book. So working on this book, resulted in our looking at over 600 references cumulatively between the three authors, and got us interested in what we have seen today. So, interestingly, the WHO, long before, over a month before declaring the COVID-19 a pandemic, had already called it an infodemic. So in the month of February, they said what was happening was an infodemic, and that it was harmful and that it could result in psychological problems. More recently, about 2 months ago, the WHO has said the next big pandemic, the next big thing in the world next year is going to be mental health. And there are some early signs of that, and I shall talk about them as we go along. Economic hardships in several studies. I'm not going to cite the studies, but they're all there at the bottom of the slide, and I hope you can read them. Have time and again, we've seen what's happened with the farmers' suicides, particularly in Maharashtra, and the issues that are being identified in the current pandemic, and also on the lessons that we've learned from SARS, show that social isolation, diabetes, anxiety, depression, it increases the risk of early death by 26%, according to a study. And, that's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Just think about it. Social isolation can have the same effect on health as smoking 15 cigarettes every day. And then there have been studies during the present quarantine. So what are the warning indicators? How can we be proactive and recognize some of the psychological symptoms in ourselves and in people around us. So there are emotional symptoms, there are things relation to thought and cognition, and things related to behavior. I'm not going to repeat them because you can see them on the slide. And some of these I think some of us may have experienced. For example, I remember in the first month of the pandemic, I would suddenly get up in the night and want to check the Johns Hopkins site to see how many people were affected, what was happening in the country, how the virus was moving across the globe. I tried to reassure myself that this was out of academic interest in the book, and this is what populations who are more susceptible to the mental health issues. Children, keep in mind that in children, often depression manifests not as withdrawal, but as conduct problems, aggressive behavior. In the elderly, they are anyway at risk, and usually in Western countries, at least, many of them are socially disconnected. Suddenly, then they're put in a situation of social disconnect. In our book, as early as February, we wrote that we should really be talking of physical distancing and not social distancing, because you can be socially connected. And then in adults, women are particularly more vulnerable, ironically, to the psychological effects, though to the biological effects, they are stronger, they're more robust, they get less affected by the virus. But the psychological effect of balancing work life, which has now come into the house, teaching the children because the schools are closed, and all of that has resulted in a lot of stress. Household work has increased because in many places domestic staff are not allowed into the buildings. And a friend of ours, Firozas, and my friend, is one of the prominent divorce lawyers in the country. And she says the number of cases coming up to has gone up quadrupled, has gone up 4 times. But paradoxically, we are seeing data showing us that not only have divorces gone up, but pregnancy again. What are the signs that we see in high-risk individuals, and what can they do about it? It's important now to have clear medical plans. Telemedicine has now taken on a life of its own. In our book, we've used the phrase, we coined the phrase, a cultural extinction event. Here are the neuropsychiatric aspects. You'll see in the UK study, 91% of cases are new diagnoses. PTSD, there are various treatments. We leave that to a treatment part. Interesting symptoms like loss of smell, loss of taste due to the virus traveling around the sensory nerves, encephalitis, encephalopathy, Guillain-Barré syndrome. So a lot of neuropsychiatric aspects. Must emphasize we're in the learning curve now. We move on. Okay, how does one tackle these issues? First of all, recognizing them, accepting them, dealing with empathy and compassion, having a regular routine, altruism, worrying about others sometimes helps us to deflect from our own anxiety. All right, so this is my second last slide. Here are waves. Now, mind you, these are not the waves of pandemic. Those are different. As in the previous pandemic, this may be the first wave, there may be others. These are physical and mental health waves. The first wave, you're dealing with immediate mortality, morbidity. In the second wave, we are seeing resource restriction that itself causes a problem. And then as we move along, we come to and Lord Byron once said, the best prophet of the future is the past. So if you look at meta-analysis of SARS and MERS, the previous coronavirus epidemics, and there is ample compelling data to show us that indeed there have been neuropsychiatric symptoms, from depression to anxiety to irritability to memory impairment, and of course sleep disorders, if you'll see 100%. So there is a lot of work cut out for all of us. To reiterate, as the WHO has pointed out, that the next big thing is going to be mental health. We are going to see the after waves of this pandemic in the years to come, and we need to brace ourselves and be better prepared to deal with the mental health pandemic than we have with the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm open to questions.